Hello everyone, welcome to KHA Homeopathy Study Group webinar. We provide excellency in educational purpose of holistic approach by conducting professional homeopathic webinars that provides continuing educational credits to practitioners following classical homeopathy principles. This study group is dedicated to provide moral support to stage 4 cancer survivors. We value and treasure human collective as our honorable peers. We bring world-renowned homeopaths to our webinars. This is Kavita Kukunur from Michigan, USA, President and CEO of Kavita Holistic Approach, Board Certified Classical Homeopath, Outreach Coordinator of CHC PR Committee, encouraging homeopaths to become CHC certified. Member of Kevin Friendly Foundation, a non-profit organization that helps to serve poor people in greater needs in India. I thank KHA Homeopathy Study Group team for their continuous support. This webinar is moderated by Dr. Sweta Singh, Dr. Deepak Sharma, Professor Regina Rianelli. This webinar is for educational purpose only. It is being recorded as we speak and we are live on Facebook. Today our honorable guest speaker is eminent homeopath Dr. Divya Chhabra, who speaks about the Similimum, Neuroscience of Health and Disease. Dr. Divya Chhabra, everyone knows. She is an experienced, world-renowned homeopath. After graduating as gold medalist from CMP Homeopathic Medical College, she did her MD from DKMM Homeopathic Medical College, India. Dr. Chhabra has been teaching in India and abroad for the last several years and has lectured in various parts of the world, such as, to name few, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, England, New Zealand, United States of America, Canada. She has conducted provings of several remedies, including magnesium sulfuricum, to name few, thea citrus, lac felinum, lac rhesus, etc. She was introduced to homeopathy at the age of 7 months when she had severe intractable colic. The pediatrician suspected volvulus and said, if so, surgery may be called for. Her mother, in calm desperation, opened up Dr. Bishambar Das, their family friend, book and brought the first 3 remedies that matched the symptoms of colic. The second was the bull's eye Similimum, and the colic was history. Perhaps there was born not only from the passion for homeopathy but the unwavering quest for the bull's eye Similimum. Today, we will hear from her homeopathy, the neuroscience, Pavlov theory, neuronal activity, conditional and unconditional reflexes, and many more. It was a great pleasure for me to meet her in January this year at her clinic, at her residence, and at her terrace under Chhabra tree, having delicious food together. I was surprised when I watched her live case, detailed, very detailed, and it was up to 3 hours. Her unique way of case taking, analysis, leap to the Similimum, and remedy selection was mind-blowing. Let us welcome Dr. Divya Chhabra to our webinar.
Thank you very much, Kavita. Thank you all of you for being here at this time, and I am very excited to share my information with you today. Should I go ahead and start?
Yes, please. I made you co-host.
Make me co-host so I could share my screen then. Are we done?
We are not seeing your screen, Divya.
I'm not started sharing it. Now I'm sharing it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Is that okay? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm here today to share with all of you the methodology that I practice to reach the Similimum, which may seem on first impression as being different from classical homeopathy, but in reality, it is just a deeper understanding of the classical homeopathic approach through the advances of medicine and neuroscience that have occurred today. It is Hahnemann who has taught us never to rest on our laurels, as in his own lifetime, the development of homeopathy took at least 5 organon editions, each of them having a different step in his journey of homeopathy. My journey, along with a lot of my colleagues who are here on this webinar today, started with, on one hand, understanding that Carl Jung said that unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So we understood somewhere that the state of homeopathy, the totality of symptoms that Hahnemann talked to us about, was somewhere in this abstract unconscious. We first began to see the cases as groups of symptoms, and that's how we were all taught, to look at the characteristic symptoms and match them with our materia medica and repertory. As time evolved and homeopaths got more and more deeper into the cases, there was a recognition, and this is all I'm talking about the last 30 years itself, that these groups of symptoms were not mathematical, separate, discrete groups, but together these symptoms formed a totality of symptoms, which then gave us a picture of the remedy. This understanding led to portraits of disease, understanding the state and the person as a picture, as a totality. However, as we were feeling really happy with this development and this subtler artistic understanding that moved beyond just a mathematical totality, we began to see in our cases something deeper that was behind this totality of symptoms. And we began to see what is called a picture behind a picture, which means on one hand, you see this old couple, but as you look a little closer towards their eyes and their nose and where my arrow is, you'll see two musicians hiding in the face of this old couple. And this picture behind the picture was a huge step in the understanding of homeopathy, for it brought us to what we call the delusional state of the patient, which means on the surface, we live a particular life, but in our own self lies another picture, another delusion, another story altogether. And this brought us even deeper towards the understanding of the remedy. As we continued this and enjoyed that fun of looking at pictures behind pictures, of training ourselves to start looking for what is hiding in this external picture that we see. For example, here is Salvador Dali's very famous, and you see the swan and the elephants. So the swans are what you see above the water, but reflected within, exactly using their same structure, it shows in the reflection in the pond as if it is an elephant. Now, this scenario in the understanding of homeopathy, we have all experienced. For you put 3 homeopaths together, and one will call this an elephant and the other will call it a swan. So this recognition that sometimes when you look at things from different perspectives, we see a complete different picture is an experience and a problem within the homeopathic community. As we began to try to understand how do we solve this problem, how do we all reach beyond this to be able to reach that one similimum that we can all see no matter what angle, what perspective, or what path we take to reach there. Another development which took us deeper in this journey of homeopathy was we started with just symptoms, moved to totality, then moved to picture behind the picture, and then we began to move to the background. For suddenly, as we were working through these cases, we realized that the real story, the real symptoms, the real Bonninghausen's concomitants that decide the Similimum is not in the central picture or the main theme or even in the picture behind this picture, but in the background. And we also understood, as psychology did, that this background is the playground of the unconscious. Simultaneously, in the world of marketing, economics, advertising, this theme was beginning to be recognized. For advertisements, advertisers realized that if they wanted to influence somebody's actions, they could place some objects that they were interested in the background of a main scene. And this object in the background would go into the person's unconscious and would affect their decision making. So for example, if they were to...
Hi, Dr. Divya, can I interrupt for a second?
Yes,
can
sure.
you be little loud, please?
Okay, are you not able to hear me?
No, we can hear you good, but little loud, please.
Okay, sure. So as we began, is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Is this any better at all? Are you finding this better?
It is good, but little more loud.
Louder. Okay.
Need to be little more.
I just wonder if this mic is working in that case.
You're perfectly good. Just
okay.
only few were asking like if they can.
A little louder. Okay.
But everyone is saying fine.
So in the field of advertising, they realized that if we had a movie and we placed in the background of the movie, which is not even connected about the movie, a particular motorbike. So for example, if I want to sell Enfield motorbike, and in the movies that keep showing, say for the next week or next month, all the new movies, in the background of very key scenes in the movie, if we strategically place this Enfield motorbike, then if somebody watching this movie who has not even registered the motorbike, because it's not as if the motorbike is being used for stunts or anything, it's just lying there on the roadside, it has nothing to do with the movie. But if this person who watched a couple of these movies now has to go and buy a motorbike, and he goes to the store and he sees a number of motorbikes, many of them having qualities and aspects and even pricing that would be better than the Enfield, he will, for reasons unknown, say, I want the Enfield. And he will give different reasons why he thinks that is the best bike to buy. And therefore, marketing and advertisements realized that by putting things in the background, you are influencing this unconscious mind. And that is affecting your decision making. And this is what we began to realize in homeopathy, that the symptoms that are creating trouble or the patterns of behavior in a patient's life that he is not able to control and that are creating trouble in his life are coming from the background, not from that main event what we are looking at. At the same time, neuroscience began to give this background or the unconscious, as Jung called it, into a more material, a more definitive form. And they began to realize that this brain and its multiple neurons and circuits are actually what this whole conscious and unconscious is about. The gap between psychology, neuroscience, and homeopathy was bridged. And thus we began to see that this unconscious was not just an abstract concept, but a definitive, a rational concept originating from actual structures within the brain. The development of neuroscience then further recognized that this brain has two parts. One, the thinking, the neocortex, which is unique to us as human beings. And the second, which is the automatic brain, which is 95% of our brain. This 95% of our brain comes from the reptilian ancestors, the mammalian ancestors, the old, ancient, primitive man, and finally coming to us as well. This split within our neural circuits and their different forms of functioning is what is at the fundamental basis of understanding patterns of behavior that are not in our control and disease patterns that emerge as a result of this. In other words, this totality of symptoms of the background, this concomitant group of symptoms, this bullseye similimum, the clue to this is hiding in the background that goes into this automatic brain. So let's understand a little bit of what's happening out here in these two parts of the brain. While this thinking part of the brain takes in all the conscious, takes in the main input that is the central focus of the event. Like if you're listening to me right now, your entire frontal neocortex is focused on what I'm saying, is focused on looking at me and using that kind of linear vision to take in the important concepts of the event. But at the same time, the automatic brain, which is 95% of our brain and not in our conscious control, is taking in all the input from this background through the five senses. We began to recognize, as neuroscience continued to research and develop newer tools, that the five senses are constantly sending input into this automatic brain, which then controls all our body functions. It controls all our reflex actions, like touch hot water and you take it back, put in bitter food and you spit it out, you hear a sound and you suddenly turn, or even to maintain your balance, to maintain our body in this steady posture, the eyes send in information. The position sense receptors send in information. The vestibular canal sends in information. All these five senses are constantly working, sending in the messages and allowing us to function in a correct and in a healthy way. It is this part of the automatic brain that neuroscience realized works not in a linear fashion, but in the form of circuits where multiple neurons join to each other and give us a function that we can then do efficiently, quickly, and automatically. So for example, when we learn what a dog is, there is one neuron for a triangular face, which joins another neuron for woof sound, another neuron for fur touch, another neuron for four legs and a tail, and then the word dog. This entire circuit forms and firms by repetition. Once it forms by repetition, the efficient use of this is later on in life, we hear the word woof and we don't have to go and touch, see, smell. We now know that this is a dog because the automatic brain circuit has started working. And as each of these neurons start, they give us in this brain the visual, the smell, the taste, and puts the jigsaw puzzle of this entire dog in front of us. This is how we learn things like walking, talking, swimming, When we walk and we learn how to walk, we have to concentrate which leg, which hand, how do we move, how do we keep our body. But as these neurons firm and form this circuit by repetition, we don't have to think about it anymore. We just put one leg forward and the entire circuit now runs by itself. So you'll understand that to allow this part of the brain to function automatically, this circuit formation, this round circuit and neural connections are essential. And they also, because they exist, they give it this efficient function. We understand fully that our body functions are coming from this part of the brain, because we don't wake up every morning and say, now heart, please beat. Now please breathe. Now kidneys, please produce urine. We wake up and say, okay, I have so much work to do, says our neocortex, while this automatic brain controls and takes care of this entire body functioning by all these multiple set circuits that are there within this brain. So this amazing 95% of the brain is full of these multiple neural circuits working all the time in a preformed fashion, giving us this complete efficiency. Now, what does this have to do with our disease? As neuroscience was developing and understanding all this, a genius called Pavlov performed a landmark experiment where he showed that these existing circuits that may be super and efficient can be corrupted. He did this by giving a dog food which naturally stimulated his digestive circuit, starting with the salivation, by ringing a bell every time he gave it food. As he continued to do this, obviously this bell now became part of this circuit. As this bell now became part of this circuit, he demonstrated that you have corrupted this circuit. And how did he demonstrate it? Is because after a month of repetition, when he finally took away the food and just rang the bell, the dog still salivated. As he thus showed us that we can continue to corrupt our circuits by introducing some things within, it's possible that randomly, coincidentally, something could happen that could thus become a bug and could corrupt our circuits of body functionings and patterns of behavior, creating a problem for us. As homeopathy was continuing a parallel going into the deeper aspect of understanding the remedy, neuroscience also continued to do this. And as it did this, another scientist, Albert, said, can this Pavlov corruption of circuits happen with human beings as well? And so he did an experiment. The scientist was not called Albert, I forget his name. The child that he did this experiment was called Little Albert, where Little Albert was shown a mouse. And every time he was shown a mouse, a hammer was hit with a loud sound. Now, earlier, this child was never afraid of mice. He loved little furry animals, but he didn't like loud sounds. Now, as for time, a month or so, every time this child was given a furry animal, a loud sound was done at the same time. This circuit of the mouse now got associated, got linked with a loud sound and fear. And the end result was this little child, who was not afraid of furry animals, now began to have that same reaction of fear every time he saw a furry animal, which earlier he used to only have with a hammer. In other words, supposing I'm every time a dog jumps on me, I'm say holding a particular pen in my hand. In my automatic brain, I will associate that pen with that same scenario of fear and develop an aversion or a disgust towards that pen, which actually has nothing to do with that poor pen at all. So, in the understanding of the emotions, the patterns of behavior, many experimental scientists clearly showed that this kind of association that we have in our lives, things that could be in the background at the same time as something very scary or something very significant is happening in the foreground, in our automatic brain, in that circuit, that thing in the background will get linked to that fear and the problem. Which means if every time, for example, that child that I showed you, this child was bullied in school, and you see that somebody is strangulating him, he can't breathe, he's choking. In the background are yellow and red skateboards, this beige colored jacket, a blue notice board. If every time it is in this common room that this child is constantly bullied, that bullying, the fear, and the choking will get associated not just with these boys, which is understandable, but with this jacket, with this yellow and red skateboard, with the result that tomorrow, say this child has to go to a university and he's looking up the websites of the different universities. And in one of the pictures, it shows the children of that university wearing this color jacket. That university might be superbly suited to him. It might be the right fit for him, but he will instantly reject it and say, I don't like this. If you ask him, what is it you don't like about it? He doesn't know. He will say, it's just a feeling. It's just a vibe. It's just a gut feeling. What it is it is an association in this circuit of fear that has come from his childhood in this bullying event, which has now corrupted this circuit. And the end result is every time he sees this jacket, this entire bullying and fear circuit is getting stimulated inside him. The problem is he doesn't know it because the conscious mind does not remember stuff outside this green circle. The conscious neocortex, which we remember stuff in, doesn't remember all this background stuff. It only remembers, I was bullied by these three guys. Therefore, he has no clue that he is rejecting a super university purely because this jacket happened to be in the common room. And this is what Jung was talking about, that we could end up making key decisions in our lives based on things in the background that we have no clue about. It is these things in the background that also become the bells that can corrupt our normal body functioning circuits. And when that happens, and the circuit is now gone haywire, it will result in a malfunction of that organ part itself. So then the next question that came into the mind of the neuroscientists is that, okay, behavior can be affected by these things in the background. We understand that. But does that actually affect body functions? Or is that just a theory we are making up? And so they did an interesting experiment with rats. What they did is that they gave the rats a very strong immunosuppressant medicine, cyclophosphamide, which brings down the antibody level and your lymphocytes level. So they gave the rat this cyclophosphamide and recorded the depression of the immune cells and the antibodies. Then they took one group of these rats, and every time before they gave the cyclophosphamide, they gave saccharine, sweet tasting thing, to the rat on his tongue before the cyclophosphamide. In other words, they corrupted the circuit of immunosuppressant depressing the body's immune function by adding saccharine in that circuit. After a month or so of this, they now took away the actual immunosuppressant, and they only gave this same group of rats just the saccharine on the tongue and recorded the antibody levels and the immune cell levels. To their surprise, just the saccharine produced the same level of drop of the antibodies and the immune cells, proving without doubt that the Pavlovian model did not apply only to behavior, but also to physical disease manifestations. Then another group of scientists said, well, but in this case, the rats were aware that the saccharine was connected to the cyclophosphamide, right? Because they knew they were getting the they could taste the saccharine, and then there was this other tablet. What if the person or the animal has no clue? Does that still affect the actual antibody or body function? So now they did the same experiments in an anesthetized animal, which means when the saccharine is given, they are not aware, they are not tasting it, they don't know it, and yet the same results happened. Thus proving without all doubt that the Pavlovian model works for disease as well as specifically works by stimuli that's happening, that is going into the unconscious or the automatic brain that our conscious brain doesn't even know about. And that goes and affects our body function. Now that's the extremely, on one hand, fascinating part, on the other hand, scary part. It means that stuff happening around us could get in and corrupt our circuits and create disease, and we don't even know it. How does this happen, and what do we do about it? In other words, the homeopathic process of finding the Similimum is that of finding that metaphorical bell. This metaphorical bell that is corrupting the circuit of a person is the Similimum that we need to give it. Once we give that Similimum, we erase, inhibit that bell from that circuit. We remove it by an inhibitory circuit from the conscious neocortex, thus bringing back our old default, normal, healthy setting, letting the organism now function the way it should. So what we need to do is understand what has happened to one, corrupt the circuit, what has got in and corrupted the circuit, and now later in life, what has triggered this circuit out, creating disease. For multiple things can happen in life. All our many circuits can get corrupted, but all of them don't result in disease because they need a repetition. And only with repetition does that circuit get firmed. Once that circuit gets firmed, it will still not create disease unless a trigger happens to bring that disease out in the forefront. And so, as homeopaths, we trace the symptom and the background where that symptom first came up. What triggered that symptom? Then we go to the childhood of the person, because new circuits form in rapid formations in childhood, because we are learning things all the time. Everything is new, and we are forming these new circuits. What's a dog, what's a cat, what's a pen, what's a spaceship, what's Mars, what's everything, what's an apple. And it is the chance of your circuits thus getting corrupted is much more in childhood rather than later in life, where we are simply now using what we already know. Thus, we need to go to the memory of the childhood and be able to see that circuit. But this circuit that we are going to see in childhood, we don't want to see the memory that exists in our neocortex. We don't want the event memory or the story memory of that circuit. We want the memory as is retained in this automatic part of the brain. So while we are doing all this in homeopathy, neuroscience has further realized that a part of the automatic brain called the limbic system takes in all the information from the five senses and records every scene of our life like a movie. And this movie of life is recorded as broken up, scattered Instagram photos or short YouTube video clips. We've all had this experience when sometimes a smell or a taste or a sound can trigger a memory of childhood event, which now comes in front of us as a flashback, and we see every detail so vivid and clear to the point we can smell and actually even taste the food that we are seeing in front of us. It is this flashback visual memory that we need to bring out in front of our patients, make them see the background there, and then be able to correlate what in this background is being triggered, causing this disease to come up, and confluence it with the actual symptoms the patient is having. This will give us that actual metaphorical bell that has corrupted that particular body functioning circuit of the person. And as we give that, it takes care of it and brings the person back to perfect health, mental, physical, and spiritual. How do we do this? The idea for doing this is, because we need to put our attention fully on this automatic brain, because everything we are talking about is happening out here, we shift our focus from the thinking brain, the neocortex, into this automatic brain by shifting the whole conversation from thought and emotion to that of the five senses, because that's the input going into this part of the brain. So we tell our patients to put their attention on the five senses. We then tell them to look at the periphery and make a note of that. We then tell them to say the first things that come up, because this part of the brain works faster than the thinking part of the brain. We then make them aware that it is in this brain that their life story is stored as Instagram photos and short YouTube video clips. And we tell them to hold that visual in front of them, look at the periphery, and make us see it as a picture. So then we see this picture, which is a circuit. And then we see the picture that is triggered their acute symptom, and we are able to find what is the bell that is corrupted in this childhood circuit and now triggered later on. If we are clear up to now, I'm going to now demonstrate this to you with an actual case. So Kavita, would there like to be from the hosts any question, or should I go ahead with the case as I see it?
So Divya, I think everyone is enjoying. So no questions so far. So I think you can go with the case, please. And
Okay.
Dr. Sweta or Regina, do you have anything to say? We cannot hear. I think, yeah.
You cannot hear?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Somebody can't hear.
Dr.
Okay.
Sweta, we cannot hear you.
Oh, Shweta, we cannot hear.
Yes. I think,
Ma'am, no questions right now.
Yeah,
Please
we'll
proceed.
do that in the end. So I'll continue with the case. So I'm
Yes.
going to demonstrate this method through a case and explain how the steps work and how we come to the remedy. So this is a patient I saw about 6 to 8 months ago. This patient complained of multiple body ache, joint pains. She had severe knee pains, severe pains in all her joints, sometimes not even allowing her to move. As I I explained exactly how I explained things to you. I explained to her exactly what we were looking for in terms of symptoms, in terms of 5 senses, in terms of a flashback. And I took the patient to the flashback in one of these ways, of which totally there are 3 ways. When we take the symptom of a patient, we start with, tell me your chief complaints. As they start describing the chief complaint, sometimes in their description, they would give you a metaphor. For example, it's like you get burnt. At this point, you say, is there a flashback visual of you getting burnt at childhood that is coming in front of you? Number 1. The second is, we ask the patient, especially when you're giving the explanation to the patient, suddenly somewhere along the explanation, sometimes the patient suddenly gives a kind of look and, oh, it's like something is registered and it has triggered something in their own brain, which is what happened to this patient. As I was explaining this to her, at a point she began to smile and there was that like, I understand what you're saying. So I said to her, when I was telling you this, was there something particular that got triggered as a childhood memory visual? And she said, yes, when you were telling me about the bell, it brought the flash of my school gong, which was a very big gong, which used to be hit by a hammer to tell us now this is one.
Well, he's still going to work then, right? Or has he quit work?
He works by himself.
Somebody's.
yeah. Please mute yourself, everyone. Thank you.
So there's this huge gong in the school, and that flashed in front of me. So because my explanation itself took her into a childhood visual, I went straight to that visual and I said to her, make me see the school. And how old are you at that time? And she says, I was 8 to 10 years old. This is my school. And here I see this gong. It's a metal gong, like one flat metal thing hanging. And there's a wooden hammer which is hit on this gong. But this is the object. This is the main thing that she sees. Remembering our procedure, it's important I take her to the periphery. Don't stay on the gong. The gong was only the vehicle to bring us to the school. Now we need to see what's in this periphery of the school that can have got and affected any of her body functioning circuits. So I say, make me see the school, starting right from the outside, from the street outside to the gate and the entrance, so that I see it in front of me. There's an iron gate, she said, like 2 kind of gates, silvery color. The street outside had a laundry shop, a betel nut shop, which sold bubble gum and mint sweets. As I entered the school from this iron gate, on both sides there was little lines of flowers, probably morning glory, purple in color. The toilets, I remember she said, We had like a big toilet with many cubicles and brass taps, like a long basin area with many brass shiny taps. In the ground of our school was a cathedral, she said. Then she said, actually, when I asked her about the cathedral, she said, actually, it's more like a chapel. Now, as these scenes come up, they would also bring up other scenes which will take us deeper into the early childhood. The reason this happens is because, as I told you, a scene with the bell will corrupt a circuit, but it has to get repeated in life later on for it to become a firm circuit. There has to be other repetitions happening, which is why as we see one circuit from behind, another circuit, another photograph, which probably was deeper and more earlier, starts showing up, telling us that this is how the pattern got repeated and fixed. This is shown to us by her telling us it's a cathedral, but then saying actually it's not a cathedral, it's a chapel, which means that it's like when you're looking through an album, there's one picture, but another picture was there behind it. While this picture had a chapel, the picture behind it had a cathedral. And the person gets confused and said, oh, it's a cathedral, and then realizes, actually, this is a chapel. But then this is our clue that once we explore this photograph and its circuit, we need to see this next circuit, because that's the way we come to the recognition of the circuit that is the problem circuit. That is the one that has got repeated and therefore become a problem. Like we said, circuits can get corrupted, many of them can get corrupted, but the ones that actually stay are the ones that repeat. Hence the first point, which showed me another picture, which is my next question to ask, is this confusion between the cathedral and the chapel. I continued, and she described it as having stained glass, arches. There was an area where they had to put candles. It was like you were walking through a garden path, and then you reached a little place where we had to put in our candles in the mud. And then I said, describe this garden. And then she said, it's not a garden actually. When the person says it's a garden, and then you say, describe it, and they say, actually, it's not, right? They are denying when you have asked them something that they first told you, telling you, this picture didn't have a garden, another picture behind it had. This denial indicates a 1M potency. So now, from recording this first circuit or the first scene, it also brings me to the next two scenes that I can ask. One is, which is this other scene where you're seeing a school with a garden? And the other thing I can ask her is, which is this school where there's actually a cathedral rather than a chapel? So the first thing I ask her, therefore, this one is, tell me the school with a garden. And she said, I don't see a school with a garden, but when you say this to me, that large public garden in South Mumbai, where my father used to take us every weekend, flashes in front of me. Make me see it. She said it's in the Mantralaya, that is in the main government office building, huge public garden with a huge lawn and grass. We used to play with a rubber ball and a rubber ring. On the structure of this government building was the Indian flag. We'd play in this garden and we'd come outside, and just a little ahead is the big dairy of Mumbai, the Worli dairy. And she said we'd have rose milk and mango ice cream. There was a big footpath with big white stones on either side. This is all the visual of this garden. She was very little, she says, when we used to go here. There's no visual of the street outside. These are the clear visuals she has. Normally, when I see one picture and it suggests to me another picture, the second one will again suggest the third picture. In this case, this one did not suggest another picture. For example, she could have said something like, it's a footpath with big white, no, not white, black stones. Then I would have asked her, so where is this footpath in your life with white stones in your childhood that you've seen? But she didn't do this. In this particular circuit, she didn't talk about seeing another picture poking from there. So I went back to my original one, this chapel and cathedral question. And I said to her, so tell me this other school with an actual cathedral. And she said, this is near my friend's house. This is a school near my friend's house. Again, we see stained glass arches, hawkers on the street, selling fruits, vegetables, flowers. A lot of filth, garbage, paper, stench, sanitary pads, used sanitary pads made of cotton. A restaurant that sold mutton patties, like, patties is like firm kind of pancakey things with mutton. That same shop in a glass case had pastries, pink and white in color. Also bottles, jars, which were glass and plastic with cookies in them. My friend's house, which was next to it, had a piano, a wooden staircase. You could see the train tracks from her window, and the noise of the train was constantly there. There was a huge open space from her window. Not many buildings behind her house. Her saying, not many buildings behind her house, suggests that another picture is now poking up, another circuit where there is a house with buildings behind. Why else is she denying it? I'm not asking her the question. The reason she's denying it is because she's now seeing another house with buildings behind it. So she tells me this house has no buildings behind. And this brings us to the next circuit of the case. And I say, so which is this house with many buildings behind? And she says, oh, that's my own house. And that was just opposite my school. Now, this is interesting because her friend's house was opposite this other school with this cathedral. And her house was opposite the other school with the chapel in it. Is this the beginning of a pattern? Let's watch. Then she says there's a muddy road, garbage, paper, fruit peels, stench, cotton sanitary pads with strings coming out from them. And now I begin to see more of a pattern repetition because this house, like her friend's house, has a school and a chapel or cathedral. This house, like her friend's house, has garbage, smell, sanitary towels, fruit peels. In her house is also green moss on the floor, a big water tank, and the cleaner woman of the building used to live in a little hut next to it. And we used to often give her food and she would take it in her aluminium plates. Across the wall, you could see the next building compound, which had mango trees and coconut trees. There were rats, cats, dogs all over the place. We would use bamboos to break the mangoes from the tree. These bamboos we'd also use for cleaning up the cobwebs with spiders on them. I wasn't scared of the spider. I asked her, did you kind of have any experience with the spider? And she said, I might have, but I wasn't scared of it. And then she said, however, once in this house, my mother found a whole lot of bed bugs. These bed bugs were biting us and we didn't know what was happening till my mother found hiding in the corners of these mattresses of the bed, these tiny little bed bugs. We would crush these bed bugs, smash them in paper, and the blood would come out and they would be terribly smelly, she said. When you kill them, there's a terrible smell. In this house is a balcony, she says. And from this balcony, I see my other friend's house whom we would talk to and her piano because she would play the piano. And she said, mango milkshake. My friend, I would go to her house and I would drink mango milkshake. Here now, we begin to see a clear pattern. On one hand, we are seeing this stench, the school and church story. We see this mango. You remember from the mango ice cream? We see this mango milkshake from that garden area. We see a piano that also existed in her friend's house. So now we are beginning to see that these two are definitive patterns that have repeated and formed that pattern into a circuit. And we are seeing glimpses of parts of the other circuit getting firmed up by this garden, which also had this mango and the milkshake over here. So once a scene gets firmed by repetition, then again to get it to repeat again, you don't need the whole circuit. So for example, if my circuit was mango, piano, smell, garbage, aluminium, rats and dogs, then if I go somewhere and I have a milkshake and I eat a mango and see a piano, it's enough to trigger this circuit. This circuit is already formed. The way this brain functions is once a circuit forms, for it to repeat, you just need one or two things, like that bell happened and it triggers the whole circuit. So now once the circuit has got repeated in this way, it's very easy for it to continuously keep getting firmer and firmer, because now it needs only a few or one of those things to trigger that entire circuit again. So I can see now the elements that are part of this circuit. I can see a repetition and a pattern in the circuit. But which is the original circuit? And what in that original circuit? Is it my house, patient's house, or the friend's house? And then what in that original circuit is actually the remedy? How do we confirm out of these two circuits, because they are repeating? Now it could be either of them. It could be this circuit, it could be the other circuit. Which one is the main circuit? And the other is only the one that firms it up. How do we find that? We find that by going to either the trigger circuit. That means the circuit formed in childhood. All right, but it would be lying quiet. Then something has to happen to trigger the circuit in a big, huge way, which will then create the symptoms. So to find and confirm your circuit, you go to that trigger circuit. If there is a symptom a patient has come to you with and said, I've developed this migraine since 3 months, then you say, tell me that first episode of migraine. Where were you when that migraine developed? Make me see the background. However, Sometimes a patient comes to you with chronic problems. I've had it since 12 years, 14 years. That one, it developed slowly. There isn't that clear one day where they can say, here is when my pain first started. In these kind of cases, you could say, tell me one acute moment where the pain suddenly increased. Where were you? What was happening? Or if a recent acute thing happened in the last few days or weeks, was there any pain in your joint that suddenly shot up, or a new joint that was affected? If even that is not there, then you go to the dreams or the fear or cravings to confirm which is that childhood circuit, which is the primary circuit where this remedy would be. In her case, I asked her, is there anything that has aggravated recently? And she said, well, the rest of my pains and knees have been there for a long time. But 2 days ago, I went out for dinner. And as I was eating my dinner, for the first time, I developed the pain in my finger joints, the smaller joints. And the pain was so severe, suddenly I was not even able to lift my spoon and eat. Aha, classic acute exacerbation that can show us the trigger circuit. So I tell her, so tell me, where did you go for dinner? Make me see it. The important words here are not tell me the story, but make me see the movie. And she said, we were going to a very nice restaurant, a fancy restaurant for dinner. And this restaurant is like in a huge campus with an auditorium and some kind of like a shopping arcade before it. And so as we got off from the car and were walking towards the restaurant, just before it on the left in that shopping arcade was a furniture exhibition. So we stepped into this furniture exhibition. What did you see there? I said. She said there were lots of mattresses on display. Cotton bath mats. Some of them cotton, some rubberized. Does this instantly trigger a bell in your own head about a common circuit that you saw? So remember, in this scene 4, her house, hiding in the corners in the mattresses. Here was these cotton sanitary pads with strings that were coming out from here. And so we say, aha, both these key elements here are in this scene, that of her own house. That is the primary circuit. Some of these, she said, were rubberized. The restaurant, she said, was all black. Everything was like black walls, black floor, dark and black. And the bathroom was terrible, she said. It had on this black floor red square tile chips. It was scary and eerie. She said it reminds you of Batman with red eyes. The floor looked as if it was red blood stains, like on a black floor, as if there were blotches of red blood stains. This is also very interesting because in this earlier circuit, if you remember, she talked about you crush these bed bugs hiding in the mattresses and blood comes out from them. Then she said, we had our dinner and then we had pastries and we had ice cream. Very interesting because we know that this ice cream is part of her earlier circuit and the pastries are also part of an earlier circuit, the French circuit, which confirmed that first circuit. Here are your ice creams and here is your rubber ball and ring. And so we see in this trigger circuit, this rubber, this blood, this pastry and ice cream, the mattresses and the cotton bath mat. And then I said, Now tell me what was the experience or the sensation that you had. So this has told me for sure that the prime circuit is this one, which means your remedy has to be one of these things over here, which means because of that, we know because of the milk story, the mango story, this blood, the mattresses, the whole cotton stuff, we know the remedy is somewhere here. One of these objects is the remedy. It could be the moss, it could be aluminium, could be mango, could be rat, cat, dog, could be bamboo, spider, bedbug. We've got to find out what it is. And for that point, we go to the final thing. We go to the actual complaint of the person and say, what was the actual symptom? What is the actual sensation? Because that is the confluence with the exact remedy from our confirmed circuit. And then she says, it was like a spasm. It was pulling like a tight band. It was stretched like a rubber band. We know. So it's the sensation like a rubber band that is stretched. So it has to be an object that in its quality of its source must have rubber. Now we know rubber can exist with metals, but rubber in metals expressing elasticity will come along with either plasticity or moldability like clay, not alone as rubber. So you will get rubber, clay, or plastic. 2 out of these 3 in the chief complaint or in the circuits for you to call it metal. Here we have only rubber, we have no clay and plasticity. Hence, it cannot be the aluminium. We know that rubber is in comes from plants, the key family being Euphorbiaceae. We know it is in Moraceae family. We know it is also in Compositae family. We know it's also in the Chiku family. But none of these are here. Neither the morning glory, which is Convolucaceae family, or mango, which is the Anacardiaceae family, or coconut, which is the Aracaceae family, has the theme of rubber in it at all. Rubber is also a key theme in the insect group, in the Arthropoda family. Almost one of the strongest elastic substances is called a resilin. Resilin is an elastic protein found in the joints. You know, Arthropoda have multiple jointed legs. And between these joints is a proteinaceous substance called resilin with great elasticity. All insects, especially arthropods, have it. You see it most classically in the flea, for example. The flea, an insect, is able to jump long distances because it contracts that elastic resilin, then it springs up a bit like a frog, and that jumps there. The grasshoppers and the crickets or the locusts are another example of this high level of resilin that contracts and allows them to take a huge leap. However, all insects and arthropods have this resilin rubber elastic material. Hence, we look at this circuit, and the only thing which expresses this rubber element is the insect theme. In the insects here, we have the bed bugs and we have the spider. The smelly thing which was part of the circuit was also part of the bed bug. The mattresses that came in the trigger is the corners where these bed bugs hide. The blood-looking red color on the floor is the crush from the blood. when you crush these bed bugs. And hence, the remedy of this case through the childhood circuit, getting triggered in this circuit and confluencing with the chief complaint of stretch like a rubber is the bed bug or the remedy Simex lectularius. This case happened about 6-8 months ago. This is a remedy I have used as I continued my journey of understanding remedies through its delusional state, picture behind picture. One I've used occasionally, but I must say, not as commonly as a lot more other remedies. As this case happened, it was probably December, January that this case was first seen. In the March of this year, we were all flooded and exposed to this shocking pandemic, the COVID-19. The very first case that was referred from the US to me of the COVID-19, which I took exactly in this same manner. I took the complaints this patient was having and I traced the trigger scene to his scenes in childhood. And what emerged there were two key things. One, he had a cough which was choking and suffocating, like he was not able to breathe and he was getting suffocated. And this gave him a flashback of when he was pushed into the pool. You know, the traditional way of often teaching kids to swim is you push them into the pool and they will learn how to swim. When that was done to him, he couldn't breathe and he was like choking on what was happening at that time. At this point, as he felt this experience, it gave him the flashback of this childhood moment of the swimming pool when he couldn't breathe and he's almost choking because the water is getting into him. Following the traditional method, as we are doing, I asked him, tell me about the background, give me the background. And he described the cement, the blue tiles, the walls. And then he came to the Ashoka trees that were all around. And I said, anything else? He said, no, we used to go there every evening. And there were a lot of bats that were hanging from the trees in the evening. The second experience he had was severe headache. And he described it like something is crushing my head. As I traced his other circuits, he came to the bed bug in his childhood, in his confirmed circuit, where he said, I remember getting up in the night and I didn't know what to do and I didn't know how to stop, and and I was crushing each and every one of these bugs. And that's when I said, this guy needs the bed bug remedy, Simex, for his case of COVID-19. I also thought this is interesting that bat has come up in this case because we had already been hearing how the origin of this SARS-CoV unique novel virus was being traced back to the bat. So I thought, that's interesting. And so I looked up, I just thought, what's the connection? So I just Googled and said, bed bug, bat, bugs on the bat eat bugs. I didn't know, so I was just looking up. And then to my surprise, I found that the bat has about 20 bugs that parasited, 20 kind of bugs that parasited. They are parasites on the bat. And almost all of these come from the bat bug group. It's called bat bug. The bat bugs are very similar. They are cousins of these bed bugs. In fact, you need a zoologist to be able to recognize them with the naked eye. Only under the microscope, they need to be able to see and see the classic differences between a bat bug and a bed bug. They come from the same genus, the Simex genus. The bed bug is Lectularius. These follow another species. That was very interesting. I thought, here we've got a remedy, bed bug, and here is the origin from the bat. At that time, actually, I had not remembered that we had done this case of Simex, which had spoken about the bat and the bed bug as well. Until I actually looked up this case right now before showing it to you, and I realized that she had done this from the beginning. As then I saw the next couple of cases, to my surprise, they also came to the same remedy, the bed bug, that is Simex lectularius. When this, and I took a detailed 3-hour case for all of them. As I then began to look at these cases, it dawned on me that for the first time in life, I am now hearing and seeing the genus epidemic, which I'd only read in textbooks so far. In other cases of dengue, malaria, flus, I had not seen a genus epidemicus like this before. But it had been described historically. Our textbooks and homeopaths describe it from time immemorial. And here now was it. Simex lectularius, having a connection to the bat bug, which comes from the bat, coming up as a genus epidemicus in the cases of COVID-19. As from March to now, we have treated many cases, mild cases, moderate cases, cases at home, cases admitted to the hospital, some on oxygen, others with just fevers and cough. We have time and time again in every case used and come to the remedy Simex lectularius. Somebody is asking me to show them the remedy name. This is it. It's called Simex lectularius. In addition to that, I began to study further and look at this remedy in its other contexts. And then I found that the Simex saliva, which is called Similimum, right? This saliva has, when they've studied the effects of it on its body, the effects on the human body is an effect on the bleeding clotting mechanism because it affects the platelet aggregation. Today now we know that one of the key problems of COVID-19 is this problems in the bleeding, clotting, and platelet aggregation that is happening here. Second, it affects the cytokine response of the body, which we know is a problem in the COVID-19. It creates this kind of an allergic reaction, which again, immune reaction, hyperimmune reaction, which has been a problem in the cases of COVID-19, because it's often not, the reason they succumb to it is not just because of the virus, but of the hyperimmune response of the body. Then I began to say, what is the homeopathic symptom? So here I do it by my technique and I come to this remedy. I can see the pathophysiology. I can see the historical, evolutionary. You see, the human beings originally came from caves, right? And the historical evolution of the bed bug says it comes from the bat bug, that the bat bug and the bed bug had the same origin. This is when the human beings lived in the caves along with bats. As the human being came out of the caves, but bats continued there, this bat bug evolved into a different species, that is what we now know is the bed bug. So understanding that, seeing the pathophysiology, I said, what are the symptoms? And then I looked up the symptoms in Allen's Clark, Allen's Fevers, Allen Encyclopedia, Clark's Materia Medica, and one classic symptom that we've all known, Murphy's, is the muscles feel extremely tight and you need to stretch. This is the one symptom we know. When I read Allen's Encyclopedia, Allen's Fevers, I was surprised to read fever with chills, like China, like arsenic alb, cold sensation, like camphora, with sweating, severe body ache, like Eupatorium perfoliatum, dry tongue, with burnt metallic taste, which is what we see in COVID cases. So in all the COVID cases, we see this chill, sweating, cold sensation, severe body ache, metallic taste in the mouth, thirst but aggravated drinking, slightest motion aggravates like bryonia. And I began to see that, wow, we didn't even know that Cimex is used for malarial-like, flu-like fevers with chills and body ache. We only knew our arsenics and bryonias, eupatoriums, but Cimex in Allen's fevers is one of the key remedies that is given for fevers like this, along with this desire to stretch. One of the other things in COVID cases, especially the ones with low oxygen, that unlike other people who can't breathe, no, normally if you can't breathe, you never put a person on his chest. You put him slightly, upright, leaning back, but you don't put him on his chest. You feel like he won't be able to breathe. But in the COVID-19, when the person is put on a prone position, even when they're on ventilators, it's found that their oxygen flow actually gets better. Blata orientalis, prepared from the cockroach, is breathing better in a knee-chest position. Again, an insect remedy. Hence, I'm telling you about Cimex because of this unique remedy. Explaining the method which I follow in every case. Telling you also that this is the genus epidemicus for this COVID crisis. Prophylaxis doses that we have been using is twice a day for 3 days, repeat after 7 days, and again after 15 days, each time for that 3 days. 1 m for adults, 200 for senior citizens or those with low vitality. Children under the age of 12, 200 OD, that is once a day for 2 days only. Then, as I said, repeat after 7 and repeat after 15. This is the prophylaxis dose. Treatment, mild cases. That means cases with fevers, diarrheas, body aches, some cough, headaches, weakness. 1 m 3 times a day for 3 to 5 days, then twice a day for 3 to 5 days, then once a day till there are no symptoms. In senior citizens, you use a 200. The reason we give a 200 for senior citizens or people with low vitality, those who are already immunosuppressed, is because this COVID-19, at first, the people with low immunity don't respond to the virus. They take time to recognize that this is a virus, and therefore they get a high viral load. And then they give a hyperimmune response. Keeping in mind that this hyperimmune response is what kills senior citizens, we are giving a lower potency to avoid an aggravation. Moderate cases. This classification of mild cases, moderate cases, and severe is what is the accepted classification of COVID-19. Moderate cases are those where the oxygen levels are dropping, they need to be on oxygen, or they have respiratory distress with or without oxygen drop. Here you use the Cimex 200. as again given above. Those on ventilator, I'd recommend the 30 in liquid form that can be used as an application on the wrist and the upper lip. While we have adequate experience of Cymex being used in mild cases, I mean, lots of experience in mild, good and adequate experience in patients with low oxygen, we have very little experience of cases on the ventilator. Because patients have taken it, however, because they are in all this quarantine area, the doctors or relatives take it and give it, but we don't have good follow-up to know how many took it properly and didn't take it properly. But at least some of the cases who have taken it, we have had good response of this, use of this. By day 10 or 12, often by 10, 11, 12 days, the actual virus is gone. But the immune ravage that it has created on the system can persist in some cases. What I've noticed is that when these patients persist with symptoms after day 12, day 13, they are usually now showing a coming up of symptoms that are their own symptoms that they have had in life before, like maybe migraine, maybe hypertension, maybe asthmatic wheeze, something that they have had before in their lives. It is a weak spot in their immune mechanism, and because this has damaged the immunity, that weak spot is showing up. Now, why does this genus epidemicus happen? How do we understand it? Basically, the reason we do have a genus epidemicus is because each of us has a different constitutional remedy. Yes? But we have a circuit. And if in our circuit, along next to our own constitutional remedy, close to it in the pattern, is the remedy from an insect group, it makes us more susceptible to develop that COVID-19 infection, because it's like that part of the circuit now gets, because of the presence of the state in this intensity, that part of the circuit is getting thrown up, which is next to our constitutional remedy and in that circuit of that case. And therefore, in these cases, when they persist in a low immune mechanism after the COVID, in many of these cases, the COVID test becomes negative, but their symptoms still continue. Now they will require an insect which is there in their childhood circuit. And these insects, as you come to day 12, after you've given the Cymex, their fevers are settling, they are getting better, but now they throw up some old symptoms of their own which they had before. And then in their dreams or in their sensations, they will take you back to a flashback of that insect that actually existed in their childhood circuit. These cases that linger are lingering because they had this strong insect in their childhood circuit. And that's the remedy we need to follow up for those cases alone following the Cymex. What are coming up very strongly is Vespa, the cricket, the locust. You also know that in the last 3 months, there have been multiple different countries and cities where the locust attacks have been there. Musca, the fly, Blata, cockroach, Formica, the ant, Apis, and termite. I have written them in the order of frequency that we have been seeing these cases. We're needing this remedy after day 11, 12, if they still persist in their symptoms. So that's why I wanted to show you this particular case to tell you that this is the theme of the remedy. This is a state of the insect theme that is coming at this moment, and the remedy that is needed in the COVID-19 cases is Simex. You will, however, find a lot of your other insect remedy cases or cases that have a strong insect theme in a childhood circuit, in an existing circuit, will throw up other acutes, not COVID-19, but other acutes, and with great frequency as you take their symptoms, you will get an insect remedy at their base. So a lot of people coming up with different acutes at this time, different from their own actual other problems, and lingering, need an insect remedy. Not necessarily Simex if they are not COVID-19, but one of the others. Those with COVID-19 must get the Simex. If they persist after day 12, 13, 14, they linger, it's because they have this insect theme in their childhood circuit, and we should go back to that and now give them that remedy at that time. Before I now throw it all open to questions, which I'm hoping that we have, I want to say, this is actually the people who are responsible for all this work we have done in homeopathy and especially in the COVID-19. I'm just your advertising front who has come here to convey the work that we have done, but none of this is possible without this team. That's Dr. Shraddha, Dr. Khyati, and Dr. Megha. In the last 3 months, they have worked non-stop with COVID cases, seen them, taken detailed symptoms, and are now prescribing independently. I don't even know, and I get to hear from other doctors, oh, Dr. Khyati treated this old lady with COVID and we never thought she would survive, and she's come out of it. So these are the people that are the mainstay of all this work that's happening, and the credit for finding and using and collecting the data goes to them. I will now throw it open for questions if we have a little time, Kavita.
Yes, we will take a few questions, Divya, and it is wonderful. Thank you so much. And you brought up a very interesting and nice case, which we did not expect, the bed bug and bad bug. So, and for the COVID-19 as a genus epidemic, so much information you have shared, Divya. It was very nice. And we will, Dr. Sweta will take few questions. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Divya. It's wonderful explanation by you. I heard you for the first time, and I found it very unique and interesting case taking by you. Thank you for that. And can you please share some literature where we can learn this technique of case taking?
So literature in terms of, we are writing the book still, but on my YouTube channel, which is Dr. Divya, what's it called? Dr. Divya's YouTube channel. We have, I have done other webinars, and my seminars that I have done explaining the entire method is actually put up there on that YouTube channel, so they can go ahead and access this. If I can quickly also answer a few questions that are up here. Some people have asked, where can we get the remedy in Delhi? So we have earmarked different pharmacies in different cities in Mumbai, in India, that do have this remedy. If you would email us on Dr. Divya Clinic, divyaclinic@gmail.com. We will give you the different locations where you can find this remedy. Right? Yes, go ahead with your question. Next question. Thank you.
Okay, from the chat, Dr. Priyanka Jadhav, she asked, is there any tips from your side for the beginners?
What are the tips from my side from the beginners? Well, the important thing here is, when you are beginning this method, you may be a beginner to this method, but you're not a beginner to homeopathy. So the biggest challenge for you is to be able to simply go away from what you know, which is the conscious mind, which is thought and feeling, and step towards the background, right? For this, it's important for you to fully take in this information. So read up that what I told you about the Pavlovian model, the neurocircuits, listen to my webinars, feel it, experience this background in your own dreams. Look at your backgrounds and understand the flashbacks that are coming. Start looking at the triggers in your life. When you suddenly lose it and you don't know, look around you and see, is there some common factor which is a random thing, which has nothing to do with what is actually making you angry? And can you link it back to a flashback from childhood? When you actually see this experience, it will click in a way that nothing else will. In many ways, what I'm saying is just common sense, right? It's just you understand the way the brain works, and it's our brain, so we know it, we experience it. All we need to do is open our eyes towards it. Put your attention on the 5 senses, put your attention on the periphery, and you will experience this. Once you experience this, it's easy to make the patient experience this. Yes, make this your own. Then you can do this with great ease. There's another question. Somebody has asked there that hospitalized cases are given remdesivir and lots of other medications. We can't do anything about it. If a patient is at home and asks you, do not give any of the medications, just give our medication. But patients in the hospital, they are given both the medications. We can't stop that. Nevertheless, there are many cases who come to us because despite those medications, patient doesn't respond, and allopaths have been calling us for the medication, and the remedy works nevertheless despite that. Yes. So what are the other questions? Somebody else asked is whether I saw any hirudo. Yes, I saw hirudo in the beginning, but now I see more of the clear. Hirudo and earthworm, we saw them in the beginning of this epidemic. Now we are seeing the other insects and as an acute rather than hirudo. Yes. Any other question?
If anybody wants to ask any questions, please unmute yourself.
Yes. Shweta Verma has asked, does it always need to be connected from childhood, the circuit you're talking about? And yes, because as I mentioned that we form new circuits. You see, as a child, if I don't know what a dog is, right? But every time I'm shown a dog, you show me a dog with a crown, right? My circuit for dog will be dog with crown. You get it? And I will continue that in my life. But to an adult, if you show dog with a crown, right, he will instantly inhibit it. That circuit will not be allowed to form because the knowledge has already developed and you can inhibit it. So these circuits, because they form childhood in a rapid rate, they form and they get corrupted at that point itself. They get triggered later, but corrupted then. Occasionally, however, there can be a very strong, out of the world incident that has happened to a person at some point in life, and then that circuit can start from there itself. Yes. Okay.
And Professor Regina, would you like to ask a question?
Please
yes,
go ahead.
ma'am. Dr. Divya, wonderful presentation. Congratulations. I'm your big fan. I would like to ask if we should treat the main cause and the surrounding suspect in the subconscious at once. What's your take?
When we are treating the subconscious, we are automatically looking after the conscious, because the conscious only tries to explain and reinforce behaviors that are coming from the unconscious. The job of the conscious is to give a reason. So if I do something stupid that's coming from my unconscious, all my conscious does is find a reason outside to explain it. You get it? So when I remove that stupid action from where it's coming, automatically the conscious goes away. It doesn't get affected. So when you go to the depth, that is getting looked after automatically. So yes, we have to treat them together, but when you do one, you'll see the other disappear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask something, please?
Yes, Aditya.
Okay, so this is my old problem in asking questions, but I need some clarification if possible. So when we go into a scene and we want the patient to explore that, like in my cases, I go too much into the details. Like in the first scene that you started to explain, we asked the patient about the school. So how precisely you ask each item compartments of the school, or you just wait and see the general picture and where the patient sleeps?
So
this is the question.
So the important question is that when you see that scene, you see everything in the scene, but don't ask, tell me how the apple looks, tell me how the morning glory looks. Just collect the visuals as they are, right?
So for example, don't ask about the door, or like how the door, what's the color of the door, what do you see in the street?
You do ask in between, tell me about the door or the window, primarily to make sure you're keeping the patient in experience, right? But every door and window will not be necessary. Sometimes it will, but at that point, the patient will keep coming back to that area. So don't, at this point, don't focus on every little thing. Get the way you know you're getting it is you should be able to see that area and see every object over there in front of you, and have the confidence that if there is something important which is left out, when you ask the dream or you ask the fear, it will come back. So don't worry about it. Yes, so don't waste a whole lot of time on one scene itself. Right?
And then also, like in the cathedral example, that cathedral in the school, no chapel in the school. So previously we would just, as I had understood, that we had to disconnect, like break the connection. So
now
like I had to go
we want to keep the pattern, right? And therefore here we connect that it has to be a chapel in the school, so that we are not going too wide. We are trying to stay in that repetitive series, right? So there has to be, so the difference is now we are not looking at the objects, but at the background. So the background is always connected. There's a pattern, right? Whereas when we are looking at discrete objects, you want to disconnect them from the background. So here your question will be, tell me a garden in a school or a chapel in a school. Yes?
And the last one for now, sorry, I have many questions. Well, for example, if little bit, I'm not really clear to go into the scenes now. For example, the patient says a very like asserting during the itself.
Hello?
Yes. So
yeah.
So suppose that the patient like starts with an acute infection of the ear and then starts to throw out like one or two very absurd words, like by sleep correction or really absurdity. So now I have the question that how to go to the scene, because now the words are there. You know how I say.
Aditya, because there's a lot of groups here who are listening to this for the first time, so this is probably going to get a little technical for them. So let me answer this to you on a Skype personally tomorrow, and let me keep it open to others who are probably hearing this for the first time. So I'll just throw it open to the others, and I will take this question personally with you later. Yes?
We will bring Dr. Divya again. It is great pleasure to chat with her. Even in January, I did interview with her. You can watch those videos in case, and her YouTube channel so much. And Divya, there are so many questions due to lack of time, the time crunch. We'll just take one or two, and we'll have the announcements, please. And everyone, all your questions, send us, and we will send it back to Dr. Divya, and we will bring
send them to Kavita. You can email them to us, drdivyaclinic@gmail.com. And my team, I showed you their pictures. We will answer that questions for you.
Beautiful team. I still remember that one, please. And just Dr. Sweta, you want to take two questions, please?
Yes.
You want to say?
There is a question from Dr. Ashok Madan. Repetition of dreams of black cat coming out of a hole. Any comments?
So
Ma'am?
if you have any dream, so like the dream that he gave, black cat coming out of a hole, right? Now remember, dreams are a window into this automatic brain, right? The automatic brain, when you're seeing a picture, the picture is formed of different pieces, basically different parts of a puzzle or different neural circuits. Break that up to see where they are coming from. A dream will have parts coming from today, parts that happened a week before, or something from the childhood. So if there is a cat coming out of the hole, I will ask the person in the dream, because the dream is a visual, first of all, make me see everything you saw. Give me the background, right? So the cat in the hole is what he's seeing and remembering as main event, but make me see the whole background. Then I will break this up and I say, when you say cat, when you go back to childhood, what is the flashback that comes with cat? Number one. Then I'll say, just look at that hole, right? And where in your life have you seen something which is a hole like this? And I will go to another circuit. Then 3, give me the background where you're seeing this cat in the hole. Just forget the cat in the hole, just see the background. What is this background reminding you from the childhood? You understand? The remedy or the similimum rarely comes up in the dream by itself. Meaning, if cat comes in the dream, you can be 99.9% sure lac felinum is not the remedy of this case. But when you go to the circuit of cat in childhood, the remedy will just be next to the cat. When you draw that circuit out where you saw the cat, my home, show me the house, show me the rooms, show me the road. Wherever he's seen the cat, the remedy will be very close to that area in the circuit. Yes. So as you trace these dreams into these 3 different areas, all of these won't be important circuits. Some he may say, I've never seen a hole like this, never seen a background like this. But 1 or 2 will go back and confirm your original circuit. Probably he will tell you, oh, this is in the same place that I told you, but I forgot to tell you the cat was there, right? And then tell you something else next to the cat, which actually, when you come back to the chief complaint, will be the remedy. Yes. So when you take in a case by a delusional method or other method, you may have prescribed lac felinum or a cat to this remedy. As you will take the case, you will find that the remedy was next to the cat, right? So you're close, you're in the circuit, but it's just next to, which is why the remedy helps a little, because it's part of that same circuit. It triggers that same circuit towards healing, but not completely. Yes. I hope I answered that question. Very good question. Please pick up another question.
Last question, please.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Magan Jot Kaur, she asked, does it mean that remedy has to always be something which a patient has come in contact or visualized earlier in life?
Very good question. So while in many instances, it'll be something that the patient has seen, but not necessarily always. Now, this is the whole beauty, right? The entire object is actually built up by different parts of a puzzle, like different neural circuits that are forming there, right? So for example, suppose you take a blind person who has never seen a rose. Okay. Now you take me who has seen a rose. And when I see a rose, you note which of my brain neural circuits get stimulated. Now you go to that blind man's brain and you stimulate those same circuits in his brain. He will see a rose in his mind's eye, even if he has never seen it in his life. Do you understand? Because seeing is not a characteristic of your eyes. It is not a function of the eye. The eye is only passing the information. It is a function of the neural circuit. Hence, if a neural circuit forms, it will create the visual of an object even if you have never seen it. I'll give you an example. Supposing a person is needs, let's say a lanthanide. Okay, lanthanides are metals, groups of metals in the periodic table, which have the unique quality of having a self-light, right? They throw out the light of themselves, right? Now, the person will give you metal, rubber, clay, plastic, shiny, hard, cold. These are all characteristics of metal, right? Each of these form the source neuron for a metal together. But now if this gets added to a firefly is a what you call glowworm, jugnu, firefly, which has a light of its own. You understand? Now, if to this neuron of the metals, cold, hard, shiny, rubber, clay, plastic, which is, and now in this circuit, if this firefly gets added, which symbolizes light of its own, and you stimulate this circuit in the person's front of his eye, he will see a lanthanide, though he has never seen that lanthanide in his life before. You understand? In the same way, supposing from the cotton family, Malvaceae family, if there is a remedy called, what is its name? Adansonia digitata. Adansonia is called boab remedy. It comes from the Malvaceae family. Now, Malvaceae as a plant family means like cotton, right? So thread is a theme of the Malvaceae family. It will have particular kind of leaves. It will have particular kind of flowers. It has particular kind of fruits. No? In botany, that's how it forms a family, because they have similar kind of flowers. So it will have the similar characteristics of the source, botany source, which will tell us, okay, this is Malvaceae. Yes. Now, this particular Adansonia, its characteristic is its fruits have the same acid that tamarind has, tartaric acid. So it's called cream of tartar. So now if I add tartaric acid or tamarind into this circuit, which is otherwise Malvaceae, I will form the circuit of Adansonia digitata. You get it? Right? Supposing I have never seen a skunk, but if you tell me fur, black color, right? I've seen, say, a cat that kind of looks a bit like that, black color, small, 4 legs, tail. Do you get it? Now you add bad smell to it. You are forming the circuit of a skunk, even though you've never seen it in your life. You understand? So if you have seen something in that same family, like plant family, animal family, or a group in a metals periodic table, then a circuit can be formed with a characteristic of that substance, because that's all there is, right? It's all formed out of this leaf, this flower, this thorn, this fruit, this characteristic. So if these characteristics are all there, all the neurons are there in our brain. It's just that they form the circuit and we see the object. You get it? So whether we've seen it or not, it is the formation of these circuits that make us actually prescribe the remedy. I hope I answered that question. It's a very good question. Thank you for picking that up, Shweta.
And Dr. Divya, I think next time we should plan more than 2 hours.
I thought we were going to do till 12 o'clock today, Kavita.
Now it is 2 hours, but still there are several questions, and since we cannot, we'll bring her back. So, please email all your questions to carstudy@gmail.com. And Dr. Divya, would you like to give your contact, please?
My contact?
Yeah, some are asking your number to,
so
or email, whatever is fine.
Just please email us on drdivyaclinic@gmail.com, right? And we will answer you back. And if you need to speak to us, give us your number. We will call you back if you're in Mumbai or in India, right? Please email us and we will get back in touch with you.
And I cannot wait to see Divya again soon when I visit India. Yeah, in order to receive continuing education certificate, please fill the chart form which is sent in the chat message and provide your email and we will send the certificate. And we have on August 29th, same 9 p.m. India time with Dr. Jawhar Shah. He speaks about complete clinical guidelines and tips for current pandemic crisis. It is again 1.5 hour webinar. And thank you so much, Dr. Divya, and everyone for having over here. It was a really wonderful session and we learned so much. Dr. Sweta, do you have anything to say? Or
Thank you all for joining us today and for all the information regarding the upcoming webinars or other activities organized by KHA Homeopathic Study Group. Please follow us on our Facebook page, that is KHA Homeopathic Study Group, or on you can follow our Twitter or LinkedIn account. I hope you all have filled the jot form and you will receive the certificate, participation certificate in the next 2-3 working days. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
and Sister Regina, do you have anything to say before we wrap?
Was amazing. Every time we hear Dr. Chhabra, it's a learning experience. And I look forward to the following time she will be able to be back. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise.
Thank you, all of you. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you so much once again, Dr. Divya, and everyone. And until then, stay healthy and happy, and we will see you on at our next webinar.
Thank
Good
you
night.
very much.
Good night.
Bye-bye.